I was raised in Portland as the son of Gerald Matthews, owner of Matthews Construction. Growing up, I dreamed of becoming a wildlife photographer instead of joining our family business. My father initially supported this passion, buying me cameras and equipment throughout my childhood. But as I pursued photography in college, he grew increasingly cold. When I finally announced my career choice at a family dinner, he exploded, calling wildlife photography filthy, useless, and cut me out of the family fortune completely. If you are watching from a place where your parents supported your dreams, let me know in the comments below. Go ahead and hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to hear how I went from being disowned to receiving a desperate call from my father asking for $120,000. Growing up in Portland, my childhood was what most would consider privileged. My family owned Matthews Construction, a successful business my grandfather had built from the ground up. We lived in a spacious house in one of the nicer neighborhoods, and money was never an issue. But even surrounded by wealth and comfort, my interests always pulled me in a different direction than my family expected. When I was 8, my Uncle Thomas gave me my first camera for my birthday. It was nothing fancy, just a basic point-and-shoot digital camera, but it changed everything for me. Instead of joining my father and brother examining blueprints or visiting construction sites, I spent hours in our large backyard photographing birds, squirrels, and the occasional deer that wandered through. "Look at this one, Dad," I would exclaim, showing him photos of a blue jay or a rabbit I had captured on camera. To his credit, my father Gerald would smile and ruffle my hair. "Good eye, Curtis. That is a great shot." He even surprised me with better equipment, as my skills improved a proper DSLR camera when I turned 12, that I treasured more than anything else I owned. My mother Amanda was the most supportive of my photography. Being artistic herself and running a small gallery in downtown Portland, she understood my passion in a way my father never could. She would frame my best photos and hang them alongside professional work in her gallery, telling me I had the eye for composition and light. My younger brother Jackson was different from me in every way. Athletic, business-minded, and pragmatic. He was the perfect heir to the Matthews Construction empire. 3 years younger than me, he still seemed to understand our family business better than I ever did. While I wandered around construction sites looking for birds nesting in nearby trees, Jackson would ask our father detailed questions about materials costs and building techniques. "Curtis, pay attention," my father would say, when he caught me taking photos instead of listening to his explanations about the business. "Someday all this will be yours and your brother's responsibility." But I never wanted that responsibility. The Matthews family tradition was clear: male children joined the construction business. My grandfather, who started the company with nothing but a tool belt and determination, drilled this into us at every family gathering. "Hard work with your hands builds character." Grandpa James would say his own hands calloused and strong, even in his 70s. The Matthews men build things that last. Every weekend, our family would visit active construction sites. While my father showed Jackson the ropes, I would wander off, camera in hand, searching for wildlife that made homes near the disrupted areas. I found beauty in the contrast between construction and nature. A family of foxes living near a foundation, birds building nests in stacked lumber, wildflowers pushing through gravel piles. These moments of discovery fueled my growing passion, but they also created the first cracks in my relationship with my father, cracks that would eventually break wide open. High school was when my photography really began to take shape as more than just a hobby. I took every photography class offered and spent hours in the darkroom developing black and white prints. My wildlife photos won several school competitions, and my teachers encouraged me to pursue photography further. Career day during sophomore year marked the first clear sign of my father's disapproval. When I told the visiting career counselor I was interested in wildlife photography, my father, who had volunteered to speak about construction management, visibly stiffened. "That is a nice hobby, Curtis," he said later that evening, "but it is not a career, not for a Matthews." The passive-aggressive comments increased after that. Whenever I showed excitement about a photo I had taken, he would respond with comments about real work versus hobbies, or ask when I was going to grow out of this phase. "Your brother is already learning, estimating at 16, he would say. "When I was your age, I was already working summers managing crews." My mother tried to run interference. "Gerald, not everyone has to follow the same path," she would argue. "Curtis has genuine talent." During my junior year, I had my first wildlife photography exhibition in the school art show. I displayed a series on urban wildlife, showing how animals adapted to city environments. My mother came beaming with pride, but my father claimed he was too busy with an emergency at a job site. Later, I learned from my mother there had been no emergency. When college application time arrived, the tension reached a breaking point. I had been accepted to a prestigious art school known for its photography program. My father pushed hard for me to attend the state university for business instead. No son of mine is going to waste 4 years taking pictures, he declared during a heated family argument. That art school costs a fortune for a degree that will leave you broke and living in our basement. After days of fighting, we reached a compromise. I would attend state university majoring in business with a photography minor. My father agreed to pay for everything as long as I got serious about my future. What my father did not know was that I had no intention of sticking to our agreement. After my first semester taking business classes I hated, I secretly changed my major to fine arts with a concentration in photography. With my mother's help, I got the registrar to stop sending grade reports to our house, instead having them sent to my mother's gallery address. It was during this time that I met Professor Alan Warren, a renowned wildlife photographer whose work had been featured in National Geographic. He became my mentor and pushed me to develop my unique perspective on wildlife photography. "You have something special, Curtis," he told me after reviewing my portfolio. "You show the relationship between human development and wildlife adaptation. That is a story that needs telling." Under his guidance, I embarked on my first major wildlife photography project documenting animals in Olympic National Park. The project consumed my sophomore year and fueled my passion even further. I was finally doing what I loved, even if I was living a double life to do it. But as with most secrets, mine eventually came to light, and the consequences would be severe. Parents' weekend during my junior year of college was when everything fell apart. My father, always detail-oriented, insisted on meeting with my academic advisor to discuss my progress. Despite my attempts to reschedule or distract him, he marched straight to the business department, only to discover I was not enrolled in any business classes and had not been for over a year. The advisor, confused by his questions, pulled up my record. "Curtis Matthews. He is in the Fine Arts Program photography concentration. One of our top students, actually." The walk back to the hotel was conducted in cold silence. Once inside our room, the explosion I had been dreading finally came. "You deliberately lied to me," my father said, his voice dangerously quiet at first, before rising to a shout. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? To find out my son has been lying to me for almost 2 years. I tried to tell you this is what I wanted," I argued back. "You never listened. Because it is a ridiculous waste of your potential. No, Matthews has ever been a photographer." He spat the word, like it tasted bad in his mouth. "We build things, Curtis. Real things that stand the test of time, not pictures that people glance at for 2 seconds." The argument escalated until my father delivered his ultimatum. Either I transfer back to business immediately, or he would cut off my financial support entirely. My mother, who had been listening in growing distress, finally intervened. "Gerald, stop this right now. He is our son, not an employee you can fire." After hours of argument, a temporary peace was established. My father agreed to continue paying for school if I added business as a second major. I reluctantly agreed, knowing it would mean an extra year of college, but seeing no alternative. As I returned to campus, anxiety about my future weighed heavily on me, but so did a growing determination to prove my father wrong about my chosen path. That determination fueled me through the grueling schedule of completing 2 majors. I worked harder than ever on my photography, staying up late in the darkroom after finishing business assignments. The work paid off when I won the prestigious Harrington Award for Student Photography, which came with a $5,000 prize and a feature in the local newspaper. My mother called, thrilled about the recognition. "Your father saw the article," she said cautiously. "He did not say anything, but I caught him looking at it more than once. If he was impressed, he never showed it." At a family dinner during spring break, my brother Jackson, now a freshman in business school, teased me relentlessly. "Here comes the artist," he said as I entered the dining room. "How is life playing with cameras, while the rest of us prepare for real jobs?" My father said nothing to defend me, just gave a small smile at Jackson's comment. That silent approval hurt more than any direct criticism could have. Thanksgiving break that year was almost unbearable. I overheard my father telling relatives that I was going through a phase and would come around eventually to the family business. He spoke about me as if I were not even in the room, as if my achievements meant nothing. Christmas was no better. While Jackson received expensive business attire and a new laptop for school, I received business books with titles like Practical Career Paths and From Hobby to Profession Making Wise Choices. Not a single photography-related gift was among them. My resentment grew, but so did my determination to succeed on my own terms. I applied for every photography opportunity I could find, building my portfolio with increasingly professional work. Professor Warren continued to mentor me, introducing me to his contacts in the industry. Talent matters, he told me, but persistence matters more. Your family situation is difficult, but it is also forcing you to develop the tenacity every successful photographer needs. By my senior year, my hard work led to a competitive internship opportunity with National Geographic. Only 3 students nationwide were selected, and I was one of them. When I called home with the news, my mother was ecstatic. My father, who got on the phone only at my mother's insistence, was dismissive. Taking pictures of dirt and animals, he scoffed. What kind of life is that, Curtis? As graduation approached, the tension with my family reached its peak. My mother secretly helped me financially, sending small amounts to help with portfolio printing costs and equipment. Professor Warren encouraged me to pursue my dreams, despite the family pressure, reminding me that true happiness rarely comes from living someone else's vision for your life. My graduation photography exhibition featured a series on endangered species in threatened habitats. The photographs received attention from several gallery owners and wildlife conservation organizations. My family attended the exhibition, my mother beaming with pride, my brother looking bored, and my father uncomfortable and distant. He left early, claiming he had an important call without saying a word about my work. A week after graduation, I received a call from my father inviting me to dinner at our family home. Hoping for reconciliation, I agreed. I arrived to find my parents and brother seated at our formal dining table, the setting reminiscent of important family announcements from my childhood. After an uncomfortable meal with forced small talk, my father cleared his throat and slid a folder across the table to me. I have arranged a position for you at Matthews Construction, he announced. Assistant project manager. Good salary, benefits, clear promotion path. You start in 2 weeks. I stared at the folder, then at my father's expectant face. He genuinely believed this was a generous offer, that I would be grateful. Dad, I appreciate the thought, I said carefully, but I have already accepted a position. The National Geographic internship leads to a junior photographer role. I start next month. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face went from shocked to red with anger. You would throw away a guaranteed future in a successful family business for what? Crawling around in the mud taking pictures of animals. His voice rose with each word. That is not work. It is a filthy, useless waste of your education and my money. Photography is not filthy. I countered, my own anger rising. It is an art form and a powerful tool for conservation. It matters. What matters? My father shouted. Standing now is family and tradition. If you walk away from this offer, you walk away from everything. Your position in this family, your inheritance, all of it. My mother gasped. Gerald, you cannot mean that. I do mean it, he said, his voice cold now. If you choose this photography nonsense over your family business, then you are no longer part of the Matthews legacy. No trust fund, no inheritance, nothing. I looked at my mother's tears, my brother's poorly concealed smirk, and my father's ultimatum. In that moment, something broke and reformed inside me. I stood up. Then I guess I am no longer part of the Matthews legacy, I said quietly. I will not live your life, Dad. I have to live mine. As I walked toward the door, my father called after me. Do not come crawling back when you are broke, and that magazine has replaced you with someone better. I did not look back as I closed the door behind me. The first year on my own was harder than I had ever imagined. My father had not been bluffing. He froze my access to all family funds, including the college savings account I had thought was in my name. I moved into a tiny studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood, the only place I could afford on my internship stipend. The National Geographic position was prestigious, but paid barely enough to cover rent and ramen noodles. I took a part-time job at a camera store to make ends meet, working weekends and evenings when I was not out shooting or editing photos. Rejection became a familiar companion. For every photo that made it into a magazine or online article, 20 were rejected. Editors wanted specific angles, specific stories, specific animals. The creative freedom I had enjoyed in school was replaced by commercial demands and tight deadlines. I had no contact with my father, though my mother would call secretly from her gallery when she knew my father was at work. Each call brought news that deepened the divide. My brother Jackson had officially joined Matthew's construction. As the heir apparent, my father had removed all my childhood photos from the family home. My name was not to be mentioned at family gatherings. He will come around, my mother would say, though her voice held less conviction each time. He just needs time. But time seemed to harden his resolve rather than soften it. Meanwhile, I channeled my hurt and anger into my work, pushing myself to improve, to prove him wrong. I lived on coffee and determination, building my portfolio one photo at a time. My first breakthrough came 9 months after graduation at a local art fair, where I had rented a small booth to sell prints. A representative from Northwest Nature magazine stopped by, spent 20 minutes examining my work, and offered me a freelance assignment documenting endangered woodland species. That assignment led to others. Slowly, my career gained momentum. My social media following grew as I shared wildlife photos and behind-the-scenes glimpses of a photographer's life. By the end of my second year on my own, I had been published in several respected magazines and was earning enough to move to a better apartment and eat something other than ramen. 3 years after being cut off, I received my second assignment from National Geographic, a 3-month project documenting wolf populations in the Pacific Northwest. The pay was substantial, the exposure invaluable. I was finally establishing myself as a serious wildlife photographer, exactly as I had dreamed. During this time, my mother continued to keep me updated on family matters. Matthew's construction was still successful, though she hinted at some troubling decisions being made. My brother Jackson, now vice president, had aggressively expanded the business, taking on larger projects and leveraging the company heavily. "Your father is not as involved as he used to be," she told me during one call. "His heart is not in it since you left, though he would never admit it." And Jackson, "Well, he has your father's ambition, but not his caution." I felt a twinge of guilt about not seeing my mother in person for so long, but the wound my father had inflicted was still too raw. I sent her tickets to my first major gallery showing, but she regretfully declined, afraid of how my father would react if he found out. Then, nearly 4 years after our falling out, I received an unexpected call from my mother, her voice tight with worry. "Curtis, things are not good here," she said. "Matthew's construction is in trouble. Serious trouble." According to my mother, Jackson had made several catastrophic business decisions. He had underbid on 3 major commercial projects, trying to beat out competitors, but had severely underestimated costs. When material prices surged unexpectedly, the company was locked into contracts that were now losing hundreds of thousands of dollars. "Your father is devastated," she said. He tried to step in, but Jackson convinced the board to keep him at a distance, said he was too old-fashioned. "Now the banks are threatening to call in loans, and your father's health is suffering. His blood pressure is dangerously high." Despite everything, I felt a pang of concern. "What can I do?" I asked, surprised by my own question. "Just come visit me," she said, "at the gallery when your father is not around." "I miss you, Curtis." After much internal debate, I agreed. The following weekend, I drove back to Portland for the first time in years, my stomach knotting as familiar landmarks appeared. I parked behind my mother's gallery and texted her that I had arrived. The emotional reunion with my mother made me realize how much I had missed her. She looked older, with new lines around her eyes that spoke of worries I had not been present to share. We talked for hours about my photography career, her gallery, everything except the elephant in the room, my father and the family business. Finally, as afternoon light slanted through the gallery windows, the door chimed. I looked up, expecting a customer, only to see my father standing there. The years had not been kind to him. His hair was now more gray than brown, his posture slightly stooped, his face lined with stress. For a moment he just stared at me, as if seeing a ghost. "Curtis," he said finally, his voice rough, "Dad," I replied, heart hammering in my chest. An awkward silence followed, broken only when my mother excused herself to check something in the back, an obvious ploy to give us privacy. "Your mother did not tell me you would be here," he said, still standing near the door. "She did not tell me you would be stopping by either," I replied. He nodded, then surprisingly asked, "How is your photography going?" Before I could answer, the gallery door burst open again, and my brother Jackson rushed in. His designer suit wrinkled, his face pale with panic. "Dad, we need to talk right now," he said, then froze when he saw me. "What is he doing here, Jackson?" My father warned, but my brother was already in full crisis mode. "It does not matter. Dad Jenkins is threatening to sue for breach of contract. We need $120, 000, by next Friday, or we lose everything. The bank will not extend our line of credit again." My father's face seemed to age another decade in those few seconds. He glanced at me, then back at Jackson. "We will discuss this at home." "There is nothing to discuss," Jackson shouted. "We are out of options unless you take out a personal loan against the house. The house is in your mother's name, too." "I will not risk that," my father said firmly. I stood silently watching this drama unfold, feeling strangely detached, until my father turned to me with an expression I had never seen before: desperation. "Curtis," he said hesitantly, "how? How successful is your photography now?" The question hung in the air, its implication clear. After years of dismissing my career as worthless, after cutting me off from the family, my father was asking if I had money. Money to save the family business. "Successful enough," I answered carefully. "National Geographic pays well for someone who takes pictures of dirt and animals." Jackson's eyes widened as he understood what was happening. "You cannot be serious, Dad. Ask him for money." After he abandoned the family business, I did not abandon anything. I said, my voice steady. I was thrown out for choosing my own path. My father looked at the floor, then back at me. "Curtis, I know I have no right to ask, but we need help. A short-term loan just until we can reorganize." The irony was almost too much to bear. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You called my career filthy and cut me out of the family fortune. And now you want my filthy money to save the business." The power shift in that moment was palpable. For the first time in my life, I was not the son seeking approval. I was the potential savior of the Matthews legacy. I did not give my father an answer immediately. Instead, I told him I needed time to think about his request. The look of shock on my brother's face was almost worth the years of estrangement. Almost. "You have my number," I said, as I left the gallery. "I will let you know my decision in a few days." Those few days were filled with intense reflection. I called Professor Warren, now a close friend and mentor, to discuss the situation. "What do you want to do, Curtis?" he asked after I explained everything. "Not what you think you should do, but what you want to do." It was a simple question with a complicated answer. Part of me wanted to refuse to let my father and brother face the consequences of their actions and decisions. But another part recognized this as a potential path to healing, a way to prove my worth on my own terms. After 3 days of consideration, I called my father and asked to meet at the family home to discuss terms. The word terms clearly surprised him, but he agreed. Walking into my childhood home after 5 years felt surreal. The furniture was the same, the family photos on the walls were the same, though none included me post-college, but the atmosphere was different. The confidence and prosperity that had once filled these rooms had been replaced by a palpable tension. My father and brother waited in the living room. My mother hovered anxiously nearby, clearly relieved that I had come. Jackson looked resentful, my father strained but hopeful. "I have decided to help." I began setting my laptop on the coffee table. "But this will be a formal business arrangement, not a family handout." I opened my computer and turned it to show them a document. "This is a loan agreement for $120, 000, at 2% interest, to be repaid over 3 years. The terms include quarterly financial reviews of Matthews Construction and my involvement as a financial consultant until the loan is repaid." Consultant Jackson scoffed. "You know nothing about construction. I know enough about business to not lose hundreds of thousands on badly planned projects," I countered. Those business classes I was forced to take turned out to be useful after all. My father, who had been examining the document, looked up at me. "These are fair terms," he said, surprising everyone. "More than fair considering the circumstances." The struggle was visible on his face. Pride warring with necessity, the pain of accepting help from the son whose choices he had condemned. But ultimately, pragmatism won out. He took the pen I offered and signed the agreement. "Thank you, Curtis," he said quietly. "I do not deserve your help." It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever heard from him. The months that followed were a strange new chapter in our family story. I maintained my photography career but spent weekends and evenings helping restructure Matthew's construction. I drew on my business courses and the financial discipline I had learned while building my career from nothing. My father watched in barely concealed amazement as I implemented cost-saving measures, renegotiated contracts, and developed a realistic growth plan. Jackson initially resisted my involvement, but gradually came to respect my input as the company's financial situation stabilized. "You could have been good at this," my father commented one evening as we reviewed the quarterly numbers, showing the first profit in over a year. "I am good at what I do," I replied. "Different skills, different applications." He nodded slowly. "I see that now." The real breakthrough came 6 months after the loan when my father visited my latest gallery exhibition. It featured a series on construction sites reclaimed by nature, buildings abandoned during economic downturns now home to various wildlife. The irony was intentional. My father moved slowly through the exhibition, studying each photograph carefully. When he reached me, his eyes were damp. "These are extraordinary, Curtis," he said. "You show beauty I never noticed right under my nose all these years." Then, in a moment I will never forget, he hugged me for the first time since I was a teenager. "I was wrong," he whispered. "So wrong. I am sorry." Those simple words began a genuine healing process. Over the next year, as Matthew's construction recovered and my photography career continued to flourish, our relationship gradually rebuilt on a foundation of mutual respect rather than expectation. My father's health improved as the business stress decreased. He started taking more time off, even accompanying me occasionally on local photography expeditions. He would never be an artist, but he developed an appreciation for the patience and technical skill my work required. 13 months after I had loaned the family business, $120, 000, my father called me to his office. He handed me a check for the full amount. The interest I began, but he shook his head. "Consider it forgiven, as I hope you can forgive me." That evening, at a family dinner that felt more genuine than any I could remember, my father made an announcement. He had changed his will, reinstating me as an equal beneficiary in the family estate, and creating a trust fund that I could access immediately if I wished. What surprised me most was my own reaction. I realized I no longer needed or even wanted the inheritance that had once seemed so important. "Keep it in the business," I told him. "Or better yet, start a foundation supporting arts education. I have built my own path now." The look of pride on his face, real pride, not the conditional approval he had always offered before, meant more than any inheritance could. As we finished dinner, I watched my 7-year-old nephew, Ryan, Jackson's son, taking photos with a small camera my mother had given him. My father noticed too, and rather than discouraging him, he asked questions about what the boy was photographing. "Maybe he will be the next famous Matthews photographer," my father said, smiling at me. In that moment, I understood the true value of the painful journey I had endured. By being cut off from what I thought I needed, I had been forced to find what I really wanted. The rejection that had once devastated me had ultimately made me stronger, more determined, and more confident in my choices. Sometimes the darkest moments truly do lead to the brightest futures. And sometimes forgiveness is not a surrender, but the ultimate demonstration of strength. Have you ever had to forge your own path against family expectations? Or have you had to forgive someone who initially rejected your dreams? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more family journeys of reconciliation and growth. And if you know someone struggling with family expectations, share this video as a reminder that sometimes being true to yourself is the greatest gift you can give your family, even if they cannot see it at first. Thank you for listening. And remember, your worth is not determined by others' approval, but by your courage to live authentically.